Introduction: The moment you decide to live. There's a moment in every life where the noise of the world becomes so loud, so heavy, that you feel as if there's no room left inside you. A moment where the weight of your failures, your habits, your shame presses down until even breathing feels like work. Some people call it rock bottom. Others call it the breaking point. But for one man, the man whose story inspired this audiobook, it was the edge between life and death. He had spent years sinking into addictions: alcohol to numb, drugs to escape, pornography to fill the emptiness. Habits that slowly rewired his brain and reshaped his identity, turning him into someone even he didn't recognize anymore. He describes it as watching himself from the outside, like a stranger wearing his skin. And then came the moment, that night, the night he planned to end it. He was alone, broken, disconnected from relationships, dreams, and hope. But as he stood on the threshold of ending everything, something unexpected happened, something he didn't expect to hear. A voice, quiet but unmistakably real, rose from inside him, not from fear, not from desperation, but from a deeper, older wisdom buried beneath all the pain. It said, "Don't kill yourself. Kill your old identity." That was the turning point. Not a Hollywood miracle, not a sudden burst of motivation, but a simple truth that cracked his darkness open. You don't have to die to escape your suffering. You only have to let the version of you that's causing the suffering die. This audiobook is built on that idea, a powerful, uncomfortable, liberating idea. You are allowed to end the habits that are destroying you. You are allowed to bury an identity that no longer serves you. You are allowed to be reborn without losing your life. Over the next 90 minutes, we'll explore what it means to kill your old habits, the ones that keep you trapped in cycles of pain, avoidance, addiction, and self-betrayal. We'll hear real stories, practical steps, and moments of reflection to help you let go of the version of yourself that is no longer needed. This is not a book about perfection. It's a book about rebirth, about the courage it takes to stop surviving and start becoming. By the end, I hope you discover what that man discovered on the night he nearly lost everything. The life you want is hiding beneath the life you're ready to leave behind. Chapter 1: The Collapse Before the Rebirth. Every collapse begins slowly, not as a sudden explosion, but as a quiet erosion, a gradual wearing down of hope, confidence, and self-worth. For him, it started small: a drink to relax after work, a little more the next day, a distraction to help him escape the anxiety swirling in his chest, then another distraction, and another. Drugs that promised calm, alcohol that promised courage, pornography that promised comfort. Each one delivered, but only for a moment. Then came the empty space afterward, the heaviness, the guilt, the familiar whisper of internal failure. He didn't wake up one morning and say, "I'm going to ruin my life." No one ever does. Instead, he drifted. He drifted into habits that quietly rewired his brain one choice at a time. Neuroscientists call this the habit loop. Cue, craving, routine, reward. If the reward is relief from pain, the brain clings to it, even if the relief is temporary, even if it destroys you over time. He didn't know this back then. What he knew was simpler. He was hurting. He wanted the hurting to stop. And these habits, even the darkest ones, seemed like the only way to silence the storm inside him. Until one day, the storm swallowed him whole. People saw a man losing control, losing weight, losing interest, losing his spark. But he felt something worse. He felt himself disappearing. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It whispers. It hides behind a smile. It lives in the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. And for him, the gap had become a canyon. He stopped answering calls, stopped showing up, stopped believing anything good was possible for him. Shame became his daily companion, and shame is a powerful storyteller. It tells you you're broken, you're worthless, you're beyond repair. Everyone would be better off without you. Shame doesn't want you to fix yourself. It wants you to disappear. And one night, he almost listened. It was late. The room was dark. The kind of darkness that feels heavy, like thick cloth hanging over the air. He felt exhausted, not physically, spiritually, emotionally, existentially. He sat alone, holding the idea of ending his life like someone holding a fragile object, turning it carefully, wondering if it was the only choice left. His mind was a battlefield, one side pleading for release, the other whispering that maybe, just maybe, life still had something for him. He closed his eyes. Tears came uninvited. And then, from somewhere deeper than thought, deeper than fear, he heard it. Not a voice from the outside, a voice from the inside. It said, "Don't kill yourself. Kill your old identity." It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. It was raw. It was simple. It was true. In that moment, he realized something that changed him forever. He didn't want to die. He wanted the version of himself that was suffering to die. The one chained to addiction, the one buried in shame, the one who numbed pain instead of healing it, the one who lived smaller than his potential. He didn't need his life to end. He needed that version of his life to end. Music slowly rises, soft, hopeful. This is the collapse before the rebirth. Every transformation begins with a breakdown, an honest confrontation with the habits, patterns, and identities that no longer serve you. Life wasn't telling him to disappear. Life was telling him to start again. And so that night, he made a decision. He would not kill himself. He would kill the version of him that no longer fit the life he wanted. It was the first fragile step toward a new beginning. Call to action. As you listen to this audiobook, I invite you to reflect on one thing. What part of you is asking to be released? What habit, fear, identity, or story is no longer yours to carry? You don't need to judge it. You don't need to fix it all at once. Just notice it. Because awareness, honest awareness, is where rebirth begins. Chapter 2. Identity is a habit. Most people think identity is something fixed, something you're born with, something you inherit, something that stays the same your whole life. But the truth, the liberating, uncomfortable truth, is this. Identity is a habit, not a personality trait, not a destiny, not a sentence carved into stone. A habit, something you repeat, something you practice, something you become through consistency, even if that consistency is accidental. For him, the man whose breaking point shaped this audiobook, his identity didn't fall apart overnight. It was built, destroyed, and rebuilt by the habits he returned to again and again. And the same is true for all of us. Think about it. You become confident by practicing confidence. You become anxious by practicing fear. You become disciplined by practicing discipline. You become addicted by practicing escape. The brain does not judge your habits. It does not separate good from bad. It simply memorizes what you repeat. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience. Every action strengthens a pathway. Every pathway shapes a pattern. Every pattern becomes a personality, and every personality becomes an identity. In other words, who you believe you are is mostly the accumulation of what you repeatedly do. This means two powerful things. One, your current identity is not permanent. And two, you have far more power than you think. When he was deep in addiction, he thought he had a broken identity. But the truth was simpler. He had practiced habits that made him feel broken. When he felt worthless, it wasn't because he was worthless. It was because he had rehearsed the thoughts, behaviors, and environments that produced worthlessness. Identity follows habit. Emotion follows identity. Life follows emotion. It's a chain reaction. After the night he nearly took his own life, he woke up with a strange new thought. If I created an identity that destroys me, maybe I can create one that saves me. That single realization changed everything. He didn't suddenly become strong or disciplined or healthy. He simply began practicing small habits that belonged to a new identity. 5 minutes of walking instead of drinking, journaling instead of numbing, reaching out to a friend instead of disappearing, replacing pornography with real intimacy and connection, replacing self-loathing with self-observation. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't fast, but identity changes slowly, the same way it was built. He learned something important. You cannot think your way into a new identity. You must behave your way into one. The brain trusts action more than intention, more than promises, more than motivation. It believes what you do. Every time he acted like the person he wanted to become, even in the smallest ways, the brain adapted. It began rewriting who he believed he was. And that is the foundation of this chapter's message. You don't change your life by attacking your identity. You change it by changing the habits that create your identity. A simple identity formula. Psychologists often describe identity as a loop. 1. You do something. 2. Your brain records it. 3. Your brain assumes your identity must match it. If you consistently avoid challenges, your brain labels you as someone who avoids. If you consistently push through discomfort, your brain labels you as someone who can handle difficulty. If you consistently numb your feelings, your brain labels you as someone who escapes. If you consistently show up, your brain labels you as someone who matters. The identity you carry now might simply be a habit you've practiced without meaning to, and the identity you desire is a habit waiting to be practiced on purpose. When people say, "I can't change, I've always been like this, it's just who I am," they're confusing long-term habits with fixed fate. But no human being is fixed. No identity is final. You are a living, breathing, changing organism shaped every day by what you choose to repeat. And here's the beautiful part. If identity is a habit, you can kill the identity that harms you, gently, deliberately, by refusing to practice it anymore. You don't kill the old you in one violent moment. You kill it through 1,000 small choices that no longer feed it. Every time you choose differently, the old identity weakens. Every time you act in alignment with your future self, the new identity grows stronger. You are not stuck. You are simply rehearsing something you no longer want to be. Call to action. Take a moment, take a breath, and ask yourself gently, what identity have I been practicing without meaning to? Is it the identity of someone who avoids pain, someone who hides, someone who numbs, someone who doubts themselves, someone who breaks promises to their future? Or perhaps, are you beginning even now to practice the identity of someone who changes? Remember, identity is not who you are. Identity is what you repeat, and you can choose to repeat differently, starting today.
Chapter 3. Killing the Old Self Without Killing Yourself. There is a moment in every transformation where you must face an uncomfortable truth. You cannot become the person you want to be while protecting the version of you that's holding you back. This chapter is about that moment, the moment where you decide to kill the old self. Not with violence, not with self-hatred, not with shame, but with clarity, with honesty, with intention. After the night he almost ended his life, he woke up with a strange calmness. Not peace, not yet, but a quiet understanding. His old identity was already dying. It had been dying for years. He just hadn't given it permission to leave. Think of it like a snake shedding its skin. The skin served its purpose once, but if the snake refuses to let go of the old layer, it suffocates. Humans are not so different. Sometimes the pain we feel is not punishment, it's pressure. Pressure from the universe, from life, from the truth inside us, urging us to shed an identity that no longer fits. But here's the mistake most people make. They think killing the old self means destroying themselves, their personality, their memories, their value, their worth. It doesn't. What you are killing is not you, it is the patterns that pretend to be you, the habits that numb you, the beliefs that imprison you, the fears that shrink you, the addictions that silence you, the shame that convinces you you're unworthy. When he realized this, everything changed. He didn't say, "I want to die." He said, "I want this version of me to die." And that is a very different declaration. It is not a sentence, it is a beginning. What does it mean to kill the old self? It means letting go of the stories that define your limits, stepping away from environments that feed your worst impulses, ending relationships that keep you small or broken, saying goodbye to the identity built on fear, trauma, avoidance, and survival. It means choosing truth over comfort, healing over habits, growth over stagnation. It means looking at your life, honestly, and saying, "I am no longer available for the things that destroy me." This kind of death is not violent, it is compassionate. It is the highest form of self-respect. The brain doesn't resist change, it resists confusion. Many people believe the brain hates change, but neuroscience tells a different story. The brain does not fear change, it fears contradiction. When your actions and your identity do not match, the brain becomes confused. It wants consistency, even if the consistency is painful. That is why killing the old self feels frightening at first, because for years your brain has been loyal to patterns that hurt you, simply because those patterns were familiar. When you decide to step into a new identity, the brain says, "This isn't who we are." Not because you can't change, but because you haven't practiced the new identity long enough. The old self dies when the new self becomes more familiar than the pain you're used to. Rebirth is a choice, not a moment. Many people wait for a sign, a miracle, a perfect plan, a sudden burst of motivation. But the truth is simpler. You kill the old self through choices, small, repeating, consistent choices. Every time he refused the addiction, every time he reached out instead of isolating, every time he chose discomfort over escape, every time he acted like the person he wanted to become, the old identity weakened. Not all at once, but exactly the way it had been built, gradually. Death by starvation, not violence. And a new self? It grew exactly the same way, through nourishment. Nourishment of better habits, better thoughts, better environments, better relationships, better self-talk. This is how rebirth works. You stop feeding who you were, you begin feeding who you want to become. A gentle warning. When you start killing the old self, something surprising happens. The old self fights back, not because it's strong, but because it's familiar. It will tempt you. It will whisper. It will remind you of the comfort of old habits. It will try to convince you that nothing can truly change. But remember this, a dying identity always screams the loudest right before it disappears. That scream is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that you are breaking free. Call to action. Take a moment. Close your eyes if you can. Let your breath settle. Ask yourself softly, what version of me is ready to die? Is it the version controlled by fear, by addiction, by shame, by impatience, by loneliness, by trauma? Whatever comes to mind, don't judge it, don't force it, just notice it. Awareness is the first cut. Honesty is the second. Action is the third. You do not need to kill the old self today. You only need to acknowledge it. The rest will unfold, step by step.
Chapter 4. Building the New Self. Killing the old self is only half the journey. The other half, the more delicate, more intentional half, is building the new self. Most people think transformation is about subtraction. Remove this habit, cut off this person, stop this behavior. But lasting change doesn't come from what you remove, it comes from what you add. A life built only on avoidance will always fall apart. A life built on purpose will always grow roots. He learned this quickly. After he let go of the identity that nearly destroyed him, he woke up to a quiet truth. There is no vacuum inside you. If you don't fill the empty space, old habits will return to fill it for you. So he had to build something new, something stronger than the impulses that once controlled him. This chapter is about that construction process, what it looks like, what it feels like, and why it's entirely possible for you. The new self comes in small pieces. The biggest mistake people make when rebuilding their lives is believing the new self arrives in a dramatic moment, a big decision, a big breakthrough, a sudden switch. But the real new self comes quietly, in small choices, in habits so tiny they look insignificant, in decisions so subtle they barely register. Neuroscience shows that small habits create the most lasting brain changes because they're repeatable. The brain loves repetition. It loves patterns. It memorizes tiny steps faster than giant leaps. So he started small. 5 minutes of movement instead of an hour of guilt. 1 glass of water instead of another drink. 1 honest message to a friend instead of hiding. 1 minute of breathing instead of spiraling. 1 boundary instead of collapsing into old demands. These weren't heroic acts. They were simple, quiet, human. But each one carried a message. I am becoming someone new. The new self is built on replacements, not restrictions. When people fail at change, it's often because they try to stop habits without replacing them. You cannot simply delete a coping mechanism. You must replace the need it was serving. Addiction isn't about the substance, it's about the void underneath the substance. You don't just quit alcohol, you build stability. You build emotional regulation. You build new rituals. You don't just quit pornography, you build real intimacy. You build connection. You build presence. You don't just quit destructive habits, you build healthier ones that serve the same emotional function. He learned that every bad habit had a job. Comfort, escape. Reward, numbing. Validation. So instead of attacking the bad habits, he asked, what is this habit trying to give me, and how can I get that in a healthier way? This question changed everything. Alcohol was giving him temporary courage, so he built confidence through routines, fitness, and conversations. Drugs were giving him escape,
So he built peace through meditation, therapy, and breathwork. Pornography was giving him comfort, so he built real connection and emotional vulnerability. Every negative habit was slowly replaced, not ripped away. The new self requires environment design. One of the most important lessons in psychology is this: your environment is stronger than your willpower. He couldn't build a new self in the same environment that built the old one, so he began shifting his surroundings. He stopped going to places that triggered his addictions. He removed objects associated with old habits. He changed the music he listened to. He changed the people he spent time with. He changed his evening routines where most temptations lived. He redesigned his room to feel clean, calm, and intentional. Environment is not decoration, it is direction. When you change what surrounds you, you automatically change what shapes you. The new self must be embodied, not imagined. Most people build a new self in their minds, dreaming, planning, imagining the life they want. But imagination without embodiment leads to frustration. The body must experience the new identity. He trained his body with small rituals, making his bed, taking morning walks, preparing simple meals, stretching, keeping his space clean, showing up on time, speaking with honesty instead of defensiveness. These actions seem small, but they send a powerful signal to the brain. This is who we are now. Identity follows embodiment. The new self must be protected. As he built this new version of himself, he discovered something surprising. The new self is fragile at first. It needs protection, boundaries, time, space. It's like a seed, full of potential but easily crushed. So he stopped explaining his transformation to people who wouldn't understand. He stopped sharing updates with those who only remembered his mistakes. He let himself grow quietly. Because some identities die loudly, but new ones grow quietly. Call to action. Pause for a moment. Let your breath settle. Let your mind soften. Ask yourself, if I were to build the new me, what is the first small habit I would begin practicing today? Not a big life overhaul, not a dramatic transformation. Just one tiny habit that belongs to your future self. Choose something gentle, something doable, something that feels like progress, not punishment. The old self dies through neglect. The new self grows through nourishment. The rest of this journey, it's about becoming someone your future will be grateful for. Chapter 5. Your environment must change. When people talk about personal transformation, they often focus on willpower, discipline, motivation, inner strength. But here is a truth most people never learn. You can't change your life if you keep living in the same environment that broke you. Your environment isn't just the physical space around you. It's the energy, the people, the routines, the media, the habits, the invisible cues you interact with every day. Your environment is not neutral. It is always shaping you, slowly, quietly, powerfully. For years, he underestimated this. He kept trying to change his behavior while staying in the same places, listening to the same voices, carrying the same triggers in his pocket. And every time he took one step forward, his environment pulled him 2 steps back. It wasn't because he was weak, it was because he was surrounded by things that kept the old identity alive. It's hard to heal in the place that hurt you. It's hard to grow in soil that doesn't feed you. It's hard to rise when everything around you reminds you of who you used to be. Transformation requires environmental renovation. Environment, the invisible force. Most habits are triggered by cues: a sound, a location, a smell, a memory, a time of day, even the layout of a room. He didn't realize how many cues were controlling him. The bottle on the shelf, The bed where he used to scroll through pornography late at night. The bathroom where he used drugs to escape himself. The street corner where he met the wrong people. The couch where he numbed himself with mindless entertainment. The playlists that pulled him into darkness. The friends who fed his addictions. Everything around him was a doorway back into the old identity. Neuroscience calls this context-dependent memory. The brain tends to repeat whatever habits are linked to a familiar environment. So every time he stayed in the same environment, he wasn't just remembering his past, he was reliving it. To change a habit, change the habitat. He needed a new habitat for the new self he was building. Not because the old world was evil, but because it was incompatible with the person he was becoming. So he made slow, intentional shifts. 1. He cleared the physical triggers. He removed bottles, paraphernalia, old digital files, toxic reminders, and anything tied to his previous addictions. He cleaned, organized, and redesigned his space to reflect clarity rather than chaos. A clean environment creates a clean mind. Clutter holds energy, usually old energy. He shifted his social environment. This was the hardest part. Some people didn't want him to change, not because they were bad, but because his growth challenged their comfort. He started spending more time with people who encouraged growth, even if that meant fewer people. Quality over quantity. Your environment is not just where you are, it's who you're with. He changed his digital environment. He unfollowed accounts that fed insecurity, addiction, or distraction. He changed his playlists. He adjusted his notifications. He installed blockers where needed. Your phone might be the most powerful environment you inhabit. He created new routines in new places. He walked in new neighborhoods, worked in different locations, created new rituals, morning sunlight, evening journaling, quiet moments alone. A new environment helps the brain feel like a new identity is possible. He created spaces of nourishment, a corner for reading, a chair for reflection, a desk for clarity, a bed reserved only for rest and intimacy. He made his environment a partner in his transformation, not an enemy. The people you keep are part of your environment. Sometimes the hardest part of changing your environment is changing the people inside it. He realized something painful but true. Some relationships only survive when you stay broken. If he became healthier, more disciplined, more present, some people would lose their advantage or their companionship in misery. So he learned to set boundaries. He learned to let some connections fade. He learned to seek people who aligned with his future, not his past. You do not need to cut people off in anger, but you may need to step away in clarity. Your future self cannot grow in soil that only knows your past. Your environment should make good habits easy and bad habits hard. This is one of the most practical truths in behavior science. If you want a habit to stick, design an environment where the habit is the default option. He removed the temptations. He reduced friction for good behaviors. He added friction for destructive ones. Examples: healthy foods visible, unhealthy cues hidden or removed, phone in another room at night, water bottle within reach, journals kept near the bed, books placed where boredom usually lived. These choices weren't dramatic, but they were powerful. The environment began shaping him automatically. Call to action. Take a moment now. Look around you, not with judgment, with honesty. Ask yourself, does my environment support my future or does it protect my past? Think about the objects around you, the people around you, the digital world you consume, the places you go when you're stressed, the routines you repeat because you've always repeated them. Then ask, what is one small environmental change I can make today? Not a complete overhaul, just one change. Remove one trigger, add one source of nourishment, shift one routine, rearrange one corner of your life. Your environment is a silent architect. If you change it with intention, it will build the new you alongside you.
Chapter 6: Relapse, Shame, and Getting Up Again. There's a moment in every transformation that almost no one talks about. Not the moment you decide to change, not the moment you take your first step, not even the moment you start to see progress. The moment I'm talking about is quieter, heavier, more human. It's the moment you fall back, the moment you slip into an old habit, the moment you relapse. The moment you wake up realizing you did exactly what you promised yourself you would never do again. Relapse isn't failure, it's friction, and it's part of the process. But for him, in the beginning, relapse felt like the end of the world. The first fall after the first rise. The first time he relapsed, it hit him hard. He had been clean for a few weeks, focused, hopeful, proud. Then one bad night, stress, loneliness, and a familiar trigger, and suddenly the old identity pulled him back like gravity. The next morning felt like a hangover of shame. He didn't just feel disappointed, he felt fraudulent, like everything he had built was fake, like maybe he would never really change. He looked at himself and whispered, "Why did I do that? Why can't I control myself? What's wrong with me?" But nothing was wrong with him. He was simply human. Relapse isn't a reset, it's a report. Psychology has a word for this, the lapse-relapse-collapse cycle. Most people fall into collapse because they interpret relapse as proof they're incapable of change. But here's the truth. A relapse is not a reset, it's a report. It shows you what your triggers still are, what emotions you haven't healed, what environments still control you, what patterns still hold power, what you need to adjust, not abandon. In recovery science, relapse is considered feedback, not failure. It's the body and mind saying, "There is still an unresolved wound here. Let's understand it." This shift in mindset saved him. Shame is the trap that keeps you stuck. Shame after relapse is like sinking into quicksand. The more you fight it, the deeper you go. Shame says, "You are broken. You can't be trusted. You will never change. You are your mistake." But shame is a liar. The purpose of shame is to keep the old identity alive, because that identity feeds on self-rejection. In neuroscience, shame activates the same regions associated with physical pain. It paralyzes logical thinking. It shrinks your sense of possibility. He used to drown in shame after every slip, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, sometimes long enough that the shame itself triggered another relapse. Until one day, during a moment he expected to collapse, he heard something unexpected. "Get up. This is not who you are anymore." It wasn't a dramatic voice, it was a quiet inner knowing, the new identity starting to speak. Over time, something changed. Not the absence of relapse, that came much later. What changed was the speed at which he recovered. The first relapses kept him down for weeks. Later, they kept him down for days, then hours, eventually minutes, until he reached a point where relapse didn't define him at all. He learned that the strongest people aren't the ones who never fall, they're the ones who get up with more wisdom each time. Every time he stood up, the old identity weakened. Every time he refused to drown in shame, the new identity strengthened. He began saying to himself, "I fell, I'm still on the journey, I will understand this, and I will rise again." And slowly, rising became automatic. What helped him recover faster? He didn't escape relapse by perfection, he escaped by strategy. Here are the tools that saved him. 1. Naming the trigger. Instead of saying, "I failed," he said, "I was stressed, I was lonely, I was tired, I was overwhelmed." Naming the cause removes the poison of shame. 2. Breaking the spiral. After relapse, he didn't add more self-destruction. He didn't binge. He didn't disappear. He interrupted the pattern. Took a shower, went for a walk, drank water, talked to someone safe, changed the scenery. Small actions break big spirals. 3. He forgave himself earlier. Not as an excuse, but as a strategy. Self-forgiveness keeps the new identity alive. 4. He reviewed the lessons. Each relapse revealed, this trigger is still active, this boundary needs strengthening, this emotion needs attention, this environment needs adjustment. Relapse became a teacher. 5. He stayed connected. Isolation feeds relapse. Connection starves it. When he talked to others who understood struggle, he realized something comforting. Everyone falls, everyone rises, everyone is learning. The real meaning of getting up again. Getting up again isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about becoming wiser than you were yesterday. Every time he stood back up, he sent a message to his brain. I am transforming. I am no longer the person who gives up. I am capable. I am becoming someone new. And over time, that message becomes a belief, and beliefs become identity, and identity becomes destiny. Call to action. Take a moment, not to judge yourself, but to recognize your humanity. Ask yourself, what do my relapses try to teach me? Is it stress, loneliness, boredom, old emotional wounds, environmental triggers, a lack of support, a habit you're still using as a way to numb pain? Then gently ask, how can I rise faster next time? Not perfectly, not dramatically, just compassionately. Because the new you isn't built by never falling. The new you is built by learning to rise, calmer, wiser, stronger, every single time.
Chapter 7. Reinventing Yourself Publicly. Transformation is not only internal, it is also external. It is easy to change when no one is watching. It is easier still when you hide your efforts from the world. But real change demands something harder, showing up differently in public. For him, the man whose journey shaped this audiobook, this was a frightening step. He had spent years hiding, ashamed of his habits, his mistakes, his addictions, his failures. He had built a private identity of shame and secrecy, and the public version, the one people saw, was just a mask. He realized that if he wanted to fully become his new self, he needed to show up publicly as that new person. Why public reinvention matters. Identity is strengthened by how we are seen. When your inner transformation conflicts with your outer presentation, the brain experiences tension. Your mind says, I am changing, but your environment and the reactions of others often reinforce the old identity. To truly change, the world must see the new you, slowly, intentionally, authentically. For him, this meant speaking honestly instead of hiding behind humor or sarcasm, showing up on time instead of avoiding responsibility, engaging in meaningful work instead of hiding in distraction, expressing vulnerability instead of fear. Public action is the ultimate proof to your brain, this is who I am becoming. Small acts build trust with yourself and others. Transformation doesn't require grand gestures. It requires small, consistent demonstrations of integrity and alignment. He began with micro-acts, following through on promises, even tiny ones, reaching out to apologize or make amends, helping others without expectation, keeping spaces clean and organized, expressing gratitude openly. Each small act reinforced his identity internally, while also showing the world that he was changing. The brain gradually aligned perception and reality. Action reinforced belief. Belief reinforced action. Facing people who remember your past. One of the hardest challenges was the people who knew him before, the version of him he wished to leave behind.
Some would doubt him. Some would test him. Some would treat him as if nothing had changed. He learned a crucial truth. You cannot control how others perceive your past. You can only control how you live today. When he acted consistently as the new version of himself, over time, some people adjusted, respecting the change. Some people drifted away, no longer aligned. Some people inspired him to be even better. Public reinvention is less about convincing others, more about embodying truth. The mirror effect. When you act differently in the world, your identity reflects back at you. Smile at someone with genuine warmth, and your brain records, "I am kind." Take responsibility for a mistake, and your brain records, "I am accountable." Show up when it's hard, and your brain records, "I am reliable." Identity grows strongest when it is tested externally. Your old self is weakened when the world sees the new self acting consistently, even under pressure. Public reinforcement became a feedback loop. Act, observe, internalize, reinforce, repeat. Eventually, his public self and private self began to align. The mask disappeared. The authentic self emerged. Call to action. Pause for a moment. Reflect quietly. What small act today could publicly demonstrate the new you? How can you show integrity, honesty, or courage in a way others will notice? Which relationship could benefit from a small, genuine gesture that reflects your growth? Choose one act. Make it tangible. Do it today. Public reinvention isn't about seeking approval. It's about solidifying the truth within yourself. Every action you take in the world is a vote for the person you are becoming.
Chapter 8. Success is a Habit too. Expanded version. By now, you've learned how to kill the old self, build the new self, shape your environment, and show up differently in the world. But transformation is not complete until you understand this. Success is a habit, not a lucky accident. Many people think success comes from talent, timing, or luck. Rarely do they see the invisible scaffolding behind it, the daily choices, the repeated actions, and the small, consistent steps that grow quietly over months and years. For him, the man whose journey shaped this story, success did not arrive suddenly. It was not a single breakthrough moment. It came from thousands of small, deliberate decisions that reinforced his new identity and built momentum in his life. Habits are the architecture of success. Success is not one achievement. It is the accumulation of micro-actions repeated faithfully. He learned to treat success as a set of habits, each one small but strategically chosen. Waking up early to plan the day, completing one task before seeking pleasure, practicing gratitude instead of envy, following through on commitments, even the smallest ones, investing in personal growth consistently every day. Each habit became a brick in the foundation of his new life. Every repetition whispered to his brain, "This is who we are now. This is the person we become." Neuroscience shows that repeated actions strengthen neural pathways. Your brain literally rewires itself to reflect the behaviors you repeat. And over time, these small actions become second nature, no longer effortful, no longer a battle. They become identity, and identity drives results. Discipline as compassion. One of the most profound lessons he learned was this: discipline is not punishment. At first, he thought being disciplined meant restriction, pain, or deprivation. He imagined that he would have to deny himself constantly. He thought self-control was a burden, not a gift. But over time, he realized discipline is an act of love, love for your future self.
Every time he chose action over avoidance, he strengthened his identity. Every time he resisted the pull of old habits, he proved to himself that he was capable. Every time he followed through, he silently told his brain, "I am reliable. I can succeed. I am worth it." This shift in perspective, from discipline as punishment to discipline as care, made it easier to persist. Motivation fluctuates, discipline does not, and it is the steady persistence of disciplined habits that builds enduring success. The power of momentum. Success, like habit, builds momentum. The first step is always the hardest. The second step becomes easier. By the third, the brain begins to anticipate progress. By the fourth, momentum begins to carry you forward, almost automatically. He learned to celebrate small wins, not because they were dramatic, but because they reinforced the new identity in a tangible, believable way. Finishing a book chapter, sending an important email, calling a friend to reconnect, saying no to a destructive impulse, completing a workout when he felt lazy. Each small success wasn't glamorous, but each one built confidence, reshaped self-belief, and strengthened neural pathways. Eventually, momentum took over, and success became self-reinforcing. Invisible investments create visible results. Behind every visible achievement lies a series of invisible investments, hours spent learning and practicing, emotional work to process trauma or shame, time invested in relationships that mattered, effort dedicated to building resilience and patience, reflection and adjustment after failure. Most people skip the invisible work, chasing only visible outcomes, money, recognition, or status. But the invisible investments are what creates sustainable success. He understood that real achievement grows from this hidden soil. The repeated small acts, the quiet consistency, the self-care, and the strategic decisions compound over time. They set the stage for visible breakthroughs that others admire but rarely see the effort behind. The role of patience in success. Success doesn't arrive overnight. It doesn't appear because you want it badly enough. It comes because you persist consistently, even when results are invisible. He measured progress not by what he achieved externally, but by who he became internally. Was he more patient today than yesterday? Did he follow through on commitments? Did he face discomfort instead of fleeing it? Did he act with integrity in small, daily ways? Success followed naturally, like a shadow of identity. When the person you are aligns with the habits you practice, success is inevitable. The compounding effect of daily choices. Think of success like a snowball rolling down a hill. Each day's habit adds weight, speed, and direction. The snowball begins small, almost invisible, but with consistent effort, it grows larger, unstoppable. He realized that every choice mattered, even the smallest. Deciding to read instead of scroll, deciding to walk instead of sit, deciding to speak kindly instead of reacting, deciding to forgive instead of resenting. These decisions seemed minor in the moment, yet over months and years, they created a life unrecognizable from the one he once lived. Call to action. Pause for a moment. Reflect on your daily routines and habits. Ask yourself, which small action today can reinforce the new identity I'm building? What is one habit I can commit to for my future self? How can I practice discipline as an act of self-compassion? How can I make my success inevitable, not by luck, but by repetition? Remember, the new self thrives not on motivation alone, but on repetition, alignment, and quiet consistency. And when you build your success as a habit, you create a life that is unshakable, resilient, and deeply rewarding. Chapter 9. The Rebirth Mindset.
By this point in the journey, the old self is dying. The new self is being built. Habits are forming. Environment is aligned. Momentum is building. But there is one final ingredient, often overlooked, yet absolutely essential: the mindset of rebirth. The rebirth mindset is a way of thinking that anchors you to growth, resilience, and purpose. It is the inner voice that says, "I am not defined by my past. I am defined by what I do next." What the rebirth mindset looks like. He learned that transformation is not just about action. It's about belief. It's about perspective. It's about how you interpret the world and your role in it. The rebirth mindset says, "I am capable of change. I am learning even when I fail. My past is a teacher, not a sentence. Every moment is an opportunity to align with the person I want to be." It is patient, compassionate, and intentional. It understands that growth is never linear. There will be setbacks, there will be mistakes, but progress is inevitable when you embrace this mindset. The power of daily reflection. One of the strongest tools he used to cultivate this mindset was reflection. Each day he asked himself simple but profound questions. What did I do today that reflected my new self? Where did I falter, and what can I learn from it? Did I act with integrity, compassion, and courage? How can tomorrow be better than today? Reflection is the mechanism by which actions become wisdom, and wisdom becomes identity. By asking these questions consistently, he trained his brain to notice growth rather than failure, to see opportunity rather than defeat. Reframing challenges as growth. The rebirth mindset also reframes struggle. Before, every obstacle felt like confirmation of failure. Every setback reinforced shame and fear. But with a rebirth mindset, challenges became feedback, not punishment, lessons, not condemnation, steps on the path, not dead ends. He began to see every difficulty as a chance to strengthen his resilience, test his discipline, and reaffirm his new identity. Neuroscience confirms this. When you interpret challenges as opportunities to learn, the brain adapts, strengthening neural pathways associated with resilience and problem-solving. Living with purpose every day. Rebirth is not abstract, it is concrete. He realized that a rebirth mindset required living intentionally, choosing habits that reinforce growth, prioritizing people who support your future, designing environments that nurture progress, acting with integrity even when no one is watching, practicing gratitude for the small wins. Every choice, no matter how small, became a vote for the new self, and the new self, reinforced daily, became unstoppable. The mindset of continuous evolution. He discovered that rebirth is ongoing. The new self is never finished. It is a living, evolving entity, a mindset that demands practice, reflection, and courage. You are never done killing old habits, building new ones, or growing as a human being. Each day presents a chance to refine your identity, strengthen your resilience, and live more fully aligned with your values. The rebirth mindset is the lens through which life becomes an intentional creation, rather than a series of reactive moments. Call to action. Take a moment to breathe, reflect inward. Ask yourself, what parts of my past am I holding on to unnecessarily? What habits, patterns, or identities need to die for my future to thrive? How can I act today in alignment with the person I am becoming? How will I reframe challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles? Embrace the rebirth mindset. See each day as a chance to grow, to evolve, to strengthen your identity. Step forward with courage, curiosity, and compassion. because true transformation is not a destination. It is a way of thinking, a way of acting, a way of living.
Chapter 10. Living the New Life Fully. You've come a long way. You've learned how to kill the old self without killing yourself, build a new identity through habits, shape your environment to support growth, recover from setbacks with resilience, show up publicly as the person you were becoming, treat success as a series of habits, cultivate a rebirth mindset. Now comes the final, most important step, living the new life fully. This is where all the work, all the effort, all the reflection, everything comes together. Living with awareness. Living fully begins with awareness. To live intentionally, you must be present in each moment. Notice your thoughts. Notice your emotions. Notice your actions. When you act with awareness, you no longer drift back into old patterns unconsciously. Instead, each choice becomes deliberate, each action aligned with your new identity. He found that awareness was a compass. It told him when he was acting from habit, when he was acting from his true self, and when he needed to course correct. Consistency over perfection. Too often, people aim for perfection. They imagine that to live fully, every decision must be flawless. But perfection is an illusion. Consistency is the reality. Every time he chose to act aligned with his new self, even imperfectly, he reinforced the life he wanted. Every small choice mattered. Waking up, breathing consciously, exercising discipline, showing kindness, practicing patience, completing tasks. Life fully lived is not about never failing. It is about getting up, learning, and moving forward day after day. Purpose as a guiding light. Living fully also requires purpose. Purpose is the fuel that carries you through challenges. It is what makes small actions meaningful. It is what turns habits into character. He discovered his purpose in reflection, through struggle, and by observing what gave him the deepest sense of fulfillment. Creating value for others, showing integrity in all areas of life, honoring his own growth, inspiring those around him. Purpose transforms effort into impact. It turns survival into thriving. Integration of self. By the time he embraced living fully, he realized that all aspects of life must integrate: body through health, movement, and self-care; mind through learning, reflection, and clarity; emotions through awareness, processing, and connection; environment through design, boundaries, and alignment; relationships through honesty, support, and contribution; spirit through purpose, meaning, and gratitude. A fully lived life is not compartmentalized, it is integrated. Every piece supports the others. The joy of the journey. Living fully is not just about achieving goals, it is about joy in the journey. He learned to celebrate small wins. He learned to savor moments of growth. He learned to find meaning in struggle. He learned to appreciate the process, not just the results. The old self sought quick fixes. The new self finds fulfillment in the slow, deliberate practice of living aligned with values, habits, and purpose. Call to action. Take a moment now. Breathe deeply. Ask yourself, what does living fully mean to me today? How can I act in alignment with my new identity in this very moment? How can I embrace each day as an opportunity to grow, contribute, and thrive? What small habit or action can I commit to that reinforces the life I want? Start small. Start now. Remember, transformation is not a destination. It is a lifetime of deliberate choices. Every choice, every habit, every action is a step toward the person you are becoming. Live fully with courage. Live fully with compassion. Live fully with purpose. Your new life is not a dream. It is already happening, one deliberate moment at a time.
Audiobook summary. The journey begins in the quiet aftermath of collapse. Not chaos, not drama, but exhaustion. The kind that settles in after years of repeating habits that slowly hollow a person out. Addiction, avoidance, and shame have done their work, not loudly, but persistently. By the time the breaking point arrives, it feels less like a shock and more like an inevitable conclusion. At the edge of that ending, a realization interrupts the spiral. The desire to disappear is not a desire to die, but a desire for the pain to stop. What wants to end is not life itself, but the identity built from destructive habits. This moment becomes the hinge of the entire book, the distinction between self-destruction and self-replacement. From there, the focus turns inward. Identity is no longer treated as something fixed or inherited, but as something practiced. Repeated behaviors, especially the ones used to cope with pain, quietly shape beliefs about who a person is. Over time, habits stop feeling like choices and start feeling like character. The book makes clear that the version of the self we live inside is often nothing more than the version we've rehearsed the most. With that understanding comes a difficult but freeing truth. To become someone new, the old self must be allowed to die, not through punishment or self-hatred, but through withdrawal of energy. Old habits lose power when they are no longer fed. Old identities weaken when they are no longer defended. This death is slow, deliberate, and compassionate, a shedding rather than a destruction. But killing the old self is only half the work. What follows is the careful construction of a new one. The book emphasizes the transformation is not dramatic, it is incremental. The new identity is built through small, repeatable actions that signal safety, consistency, and self-respect to the brain. Replacement becomes essential, because removing destructive habits without replacing what they provided only invites their return. Comfort, escape, validation, and relief must be rebuilt in healthier forms. As the new self begins to take shape, the environment comes under scrutiny. The book shows how places, people, routines, and even digital spaces quietly reinforce identity. Change becomes sustainable only when surroundings stop triggering the past and start supporting the future. The listener is guided to see environment not as background, but as an active participant in either decay or growth. Then comes the reckoning almost everyone faces: relapse. The return of old habits threatens to undo progress, but the book reframes this moment with honesty and grace. Relapse is not failure, it is information. What matters is not the fall, but how quickly shame is interrupted and learning begins. Over time, the distance between falling and rising shortens, and resilience becomes part of the new identity. As internal change stabilizes, the journey moves outward. Reinvention can no longer remain private. Small public acts, showing up, keeping promises, acting with integrity, begin to align the inner self with the outer world. Some people adjust, some resist, some fall away, but consistency, not explanation, becomes the proof of change. Success, the book reveals, is built the same way identity was built, through repetition. Discipline is reframed as compassion for the future self, not punishment for the present one. Momentum replaces motivation. Small wins accumulate quietly, and over time, effort turns into ease. What once required force becomes natural. Near the end, the perspective widens again. Transformation is no longer a single event, but a mindset. Rebirth is ongoing. Old habits occasionally knock, but awareness keeps the door closed. Reflection replaces judgment. Growth replaces urgency. The listener is reminded that evolution is not betrayal of the past, but its proper use. The final moments settle into integration. Living fully means alignment between thought and action, intention and behavior, inner values and outer life. Perfection is abandoned in favor of consistency. Purpose becomes the guiding thread that makes daily choices meaningful. The book closes where it began, but from a higher ground.
You are not limited to one version of yourself. You are allowed to end identities that no longer serve you. You are allowed to rebuild again and again without destroying your life in the process. Not by force, not all at once, but one deliberate habit at a time.